Welcome, and thank you for joining today's webinar on BCM1's voice-enabled team solution that supercharges MS Teams into a full voice platform. We know your customers are asking about Microsoft Teams, and this session will provide you with all you need to know about the Teams phone system, which will include its limitations, planning steps and licensing, direct routing, migration strategies, and other options that you can provide your customers as a BCM1 channel partner. Leading today's charge is Mike Nowak, our Senior Vice President of Sales at NextVortex, a BCM1 brand and sister company. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. First, all of you are muted, and if you have any questions, please state them in the Q&A pivot down at the bottom of your screen, and we will address them at the end of the session. This call is also being recorded, and it will be available by end of week on the BCM1 website. It's now my pleasure to turn this over to Mike, an industry leader heading up our UCaaS team with over 20 years of experience. Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Thank you for everyone that joined today. Great to be with you. We're going to try to make this very concise for you. We're going to touch on several topics. The main objective here is that you walk away in 25 minutes with a solid understanding of some of the applications and solutions you can offer as a business partner of BCM1 NextVortex. So we're going to try to get through that, make sure that we're on target with that message and clear. At the very end, we'll open it up for Q&A. We promised a 25-minute webinar. I'm going to do everything I can to get you there. At the end of this, again, if you need to drop off, no problem. We will record this and are recording it, and it'll be available, and we'll have many others. Very top of our list is providing education to our partners. So that being said, let me advance here, and I just want to cover one key thing here. Our audience today is made up of a lot of our BCM business partners as well as NextVortex. We are one company. You'll see a lot of the BCM banners, but NextVortex is a critical part of the voice practice. We utilize a lot of those core capabilities that are owned, operated, and developed under that practice. And some of our portals from time to time, you'll see the NextVortex flag in them, but one company. And we use a lot of the same resources in our voice-enabled team solutions. Just one other piece here. Again, this is going to help with the solution design stuff that you're going to see in a minute. As a collective family, we have some really neat attributes and some capabilities to solve business problems, especially those that are changing voice, addressing work from home, migrating to Teams, or needs to fill in some feature gaps. Again, some of those things that we're going to depend on is our Microsoft Gold practice. That Microsoft Gold practice is here for a variety of reasons for you. We have a lot of Microsoft partners, and sometimes they'll need us for professional services, but that expertise in-house is helpful. It is a complement. We also have some folks that want to sell Microsoft services and the licenses. You can do that through your master agent and through BCM1 NextVortex. We also use a lot of those voice capabilities for interoperability with multiple systems. We use our UCaaS backbone to provide UCaaS integration with Teams, and that SIP trunking service when you're designing PBX solutions that are sharing resources. And of course, the disaster recovery and the 911 stuff you expect from us. All these things are under the covers. We're going to touch on them on some of the solution side. But again, part of the framework of what we have for you. Some terminology that we should get out of the way. Some folks are new to this. Microsoft phone system, that's what they call it. That's the actual phone system in the 365 environment that you can turn on with Microsoft licensing. All right, so you're going to need the Microsoft phone system and a lot of these solutions we're going to talk about. Direct routing is really the ability to allow you to bring in a BCM1 into the fray to allow you to have PSTN calling, porting your numbers in to us versus Microsoft, providing your 911 zoning, our project coordination, etc. Again, your alternative to using a Microsoft calling plan. Session border controllers, or SBC. SBCs are required by Microsoft to interop with them. So you have to have certified SBCs. That's part of our solution set. ERL, emergency response locations. It comes up a lot in work from home environment and Carrier's Law and Ray Baum Act, 911 support. Teams firmware. Teams firmware is going to be required on any Teams phones that they're connected to the Microsoft phone system. And then SIP forking is a critical component to allow you to connect different systems together and ring devices simultaneously, and use that in the UCaaS integration solution set. So those are some of the topics, some of the terms that you're going to hear, and let's get that out of the way. Moving forward, collaboration. It's usually how folks get started with Teams. Teams is free for all 365 users. When the pandemic hit, it amplified the need for collaboration and to chat and to file share and screen share, and it leads into the idea of calling each other internally. And then you find out you can do video calls, and then you can federate with your customers and other organizations. And then all of a sudden you're into this conversation that, why don't I just use this for my communication system? And you get into the phone system and the voice solutions that we're going to talk about. So Microsoft did an amazing job, timed it right, had a great back end to this, and the adoption rate was really fast and clean because of how easy they made it. So hats off of how they set this up. Again, the collaboration components, all the stuff you see here can be done free. The difference is when you get to the PSTN at the bottom. But one thing that folks find is once they jump into the Teams phone system, they have to start to understand and inventory devices and have a deep conversation on how are people going to interact with the software going forward. Are they going to stay on their laptop? Do they need a specific Teams phone? Do we need to address huddle room phones? Or do we allow our staff to have headsets, and what's our policy? But what you'll find here is that when you move to a Microsoft phone system and you connect devices directly to the Microsoft phone system, you're going to have to use certified Microsoft handsets. Now, the good news is we have different ways of addressing this, but one of the underlying things that you do have to factor in, we have to have a chat on the devices and how you're going to roll that out when you design a team solution. When folks jump into the actual phone system itself, there's another chat that must be had by our business partners and their sales engineering group, is really what are those call flows? What is that customer expecting from a call handling perspective? How are they going to route calls? Are they going to use any paging? Do they have intercom functions? Do they have software integration? Those things must come out. The challenge that we see are folks commonly get wrapped up into the collaboration capabilities and just assume by turning on the phone system, it's going to handle all their call flow challenges. And they're usually greatly mistaken. And that can cause a lot of stress for our business partners when they're talking with their customers and trying to implement one of these solutions. So we encourage you to have a deep dive on how are the call flows happening with that customer before recommending a solution. Now, again, there's different ways that folks use Teams and use phone systems and voice services tied to them. The first one, again, is easy. This is internal calls. Folks are just using it for collaboration, document sharing, chat, what have you. The middle version is where folks actually turn on the phone system. This is the Microsoft phone system. They buy the license. They want to start making and receiving calls from the outside world. They identify in that process, there's certain things that that system just isn't set up to do, or it has gaps. That's where you recommend a more encompassing solution to fill in those areas to give your customer what they need when they roll this out. I can tell you from personal experience, there's been a lot of cleanup work that's had to happen where folks rush out and just turn on the system without that consultative dial plan discussion. So those are three different scenarios. Today, we're going to talk mainly about middle two, or the one in the middle and the one on the right. What you see here is a checklist of items that we think you should cover on any pre-sales call. This is how our sales team supports our business partners, is that we're going to ask about, have these things that have been discussed, or can we help have these discussions with your end user prospect? We are a true sell with program. And so these are things that we want to make sure are covered so we don't miss anything. calling features and functions and handling. Are you doing decentralized or centralized? Are you transferring back and forth to offices? How do those home users interact with corporate? Do you need separate auto attendants? Do the organization act like it's separate organizations? Or does it look like one unified organization? Those are things that must be addressed when you're addressing a Teams environment. Many folks are using CRM integration. You have to have that discussion. Common area phones, door access, paging units, what phones are you going to use? And then, of course, how are we going to address 911 zoning for work from home folks or people that are moving back and forth to the office? And then lastly, what's the service plan that we're going to use? Again, there's different options. I think you're going to find Microsoft has some very easy options for simple environments. And they may be costly, but they are simple and they're usually used for, again, small applications. We're going to talk about the solution set and some examples here next that hopefully fill this in for you. Okay. I'm going to start out by just sharing with you the three main pillars of solutions that we offer here at BCM1 Next Vortex. Option one, again, very simple. This is someone that's decided to open up the Microsoft phone system and have their users start to use it. How are they going to port their phone numbers in and have their calling made to and from the outside world? And this is where you would use direct routing. Direct routing, BCM would be your direct routing partner, and we would simply be your calling plan. We'd provide the DID, new reported, caller ID name, and then we give you the SBC access to integrate into Teams phone system. You turn it on and you're up and running very quickly. So again, think of this as a Microsoft Teams call plan replacement option, very easy to offer. And for those that are Microsoft partners, you actually get paid on these. We pay commissions on our plans, of course. If you do a Microsoft plan, that's not usually the case. The middle option is when you discuss with your customer that needs advanced features or better call handling capabilities. They may have things like software integration, call recording, they may have paging units, etc. In this model, what you're really using is the BCM1 UCaaS service, and then you integrate with Teams. And really what's happening is SIP forking on the back end. And that opens up a lot of possibilities for you. And I'll go into detail in a second. The third option is the SIP trunking services option, where you take any existing SIP plan and add into it the hosted voice-enabled team service. So you take one of our branded SIP plans and enable it with SBC hosting, and that ties you into the Microsoft environment. So you can use that with our existing service plan portfolio. This works really well if you're ever migrating someone with a phone system to Microsoft Teams or do a phone system hybrid environment. Okay, so let's talk to a couple examples, and hopefully it sheds some light on how you can solve some problems with these different scenarios. Option one, this is a very simple office layout. I'd call it a typical layout. Picture 25, 30 people, auto attendant, simple call flows. Maybe a common area phone here and there, conference room phone, and of course, work from home. In this environment, you got a couple things you have to address. But what you'd find is that most of these customers are going to want to use you as their business partner. They're going to want something that's solid, that offers the interoperability with Teams, but they don't want Microsoft to be their phone company. And so the plan that our business partners offer is what we call a voice-enabled Teams calling plan. And what this does is it, again, simply allows them to port their phone numbers in, gives them their free calling anywhere they want to call in the contiguous US and Canada, and it gives them the option to use international rates and call anywhere they want to. But this is the alternative to using a Microsoft calling plan. There's other benefits that they get. In addition, they can add their 911 locations for work from home or other buildings very easily. They can expand this into other service offerings. They can add in feature sets if they need it. And they always get the disaster recovery failover capability for their phone numbers. That would protect them if Microsoft was ever down. And it gives them the visibility into the service through the portal. So this is the voice-enabled Teams calling plan And you usually would use this for simple layouts where folks are completely dependent on the Microsoft phone system feature set. Just a quick screenshot. This is the disaster recovery forwarding capability. During the implementation process, folks will tell us how they want their failover routes to act in case Teams was gone. It will fail over to the cell phone or alternative method they want calls to be answered. So this is a nice protection for all customers' DIDs and toll-free numbers. The 911 portal, this allows folks to see all of their 911 locations and add any of the ELINs that they want to be applicable for that given ERL location. So if you're rolling out a bunch of 911 locations for work from home or different buildings of Teams, this portal and this tool set is very helpful, especially the test procedures that you can do with 311 or 933. This is all included with the service. The additional things you can add on are specific location addresses, very inexpensive. The setup process is a couple clicks. There is no PowerShell scripting that you have to do. There is no command line stuff you have to do. There's no smoke and mirrors. You have high availability SBCs. You key in your Microsoft credentials and you click submit. This will bond. You can be up and running, making phone calls almost immediately. It's a really well-designed service, easy to use, and then we just, with our coordinators, we port over the numbers on the given FOC date that's coordinated with our business partners and customers. So really easy setup, quick to use. Let's talk about a little more advanced location scenario. So in this scenario here that you see, imagine that they have a centralized call handling environment. These folks also have advanced call handling needs. You're talking call queues, you're talking advanced routing set up to specific user groups. You have users that are answering calls and need sidecar capabilities that you wouldn't use in a regular Teams phone. Salesforce integration is important to this customer set. They may have things like paging or conference phones they have to address. And of course, work from home, everyone has that. In this environment, because of their call handling and because of some of the extra features that they need, like call recording, et cetera, using Teams by itself would probably cause a lot of stress to their organization. It'd probably cause a lot of soft costs to be incurred by them as well. In this environment, what they really need is a UCaaS framework. And what would happen in this environment, how we would address it, is we would use our UCaaS One system and provide services to all of the individual seat users, conference phones. We would provide the paging capabilities that are needed, the software integration for the customer, and that would be your underlying system. Because the customer is a user of Teams and appreciates the Teams collaboration service, they'll continue to do that. What they get to choose with a centralized service from us that's fully integrated with Teams is the ability to pick and choose their endpoint. They could make and receive their phone calls through Teams using our underlying framework. They also could use our handsets that we provide that are interoperable with our UCaaS One platform. So that opens up the amount of devices this customer can use. It gives everyone a centralized look and feel. The Teams users that want to make and receive calls all day long through Teams continue to do that, or they have the option to use one of our SIP phones that are compatible with our UCaaS One service. So this is a pretty common solution in the industry. It solves a lot of different problems. You can add different types of seats to it, including the special application seats, call center seats, call analytics, or you can have a general seat type. In almost all of these cases, folks are going to continue to make calls internally through Teams. They're going to use Teams document sharing, Teams chat. We're going to tie the PSTN into it and fill in feature gaps with this centralized service. $19.95 is what a typical user would pay for this service, and it includes full Teams integration with it. Now, with these solutions, the other cost the customer incurs is the Microsoft phone system license. So when you still do this, you still are enacting the Microsoft phone system. They have to have that turned on to have that true integration end to end. Okay, so this is solution set 2. and an easy one to deploy, and it addresses many of the advanced calling issues that folks have. Let's talk about a decentralized office. This could be hundreds of doctors' offices, or it could be a few doctors' offices, to give you an example. These folks act independently. They have their own number that they handle calls with, or they could have a call center handle it for them. It's really their choice. These users could be engineering firms, they could be media companies, insurance companies. But all in all, they have usually a lot of different offices in their fleet, but again, pretty decentralized. Their calling behavior is usually pretty simple. They may have, again, a couple advanced features, but overall, most of the needs are really easy. And again, work from home, common theme. Most people have that today. In this environment, do they really need a centralized phone system underpinning everything? That could be pretty costly to do, especially when 90% of their staff have really easy, simple calling needs. So what you would see that someone would come to us for is what we call a hybrid solution, which is part calling plan and part voice-enabled Teams UCaaS service. And so what they do is they identify some of the users in their organization that really require the advanced needs, the paging units, the common area phones, and they decide that those users specifically should be on a full UCaaS seat from BCM1. The other users in the organization are very simple users and they need a general calling plan. And so what the end solution looks like is it's a hybrid. Some folks are on the calling plan that you see in the left, and some folks are on the UCaaS service. Now, the drawback of this environment, and that's why you have to be specific of where you put it in, you are really running two separate phone systems in this environment. So if you want to call transfer back and forth, that becomes more difficult. You either have to set up speed dials or dial plan adjustment. Again, this is not for everybody, but for some offices, folks love this. One example that you'll run into is at the university level. So universities will come to us and they'll say that they need the advanced feature set, the call center seats for their admissions and billing departments. But all their professors and faculty need simple calling plans. And so they can save a tremendous amount of money by pairing them out separately. The other trick of this solution is that you'll find the calling plans on the left, dependent on the Microsoft phone system. You buy a Microsoft license for that. The solution on the right, because it's a separate system, and you may not need the full integration, you may not need to buy the phone system license. So again, this is a consultative discussion, but again, allows us to solve a problem and provide a lot of differentiation for you. Certain verticals really love this type of solution set. We want to make sure it's available to you. The third option is the trunking option. And what this does is that if you are in the business of providing your own SBCs and consulting with customers that either have their SBCs in place today and want that control themselves, wonderful. You simply take our SIP trunking calling plans and marry them up together. We certify and test with almost everybody, especially the main ones that you're going to see that are very common here on the left, Ribbon Audio Codes and TE Systems. If you're working with any of those, you just take our SIP trunks and you're ready to go. And a lot of times you'll find us right in the drop-down menu. The other alternative is you could take our SIP trunks that we have and you can add our hosted SBCs to them. And so that would allow you to either build hybrid solutions or build a SIP trunking based solution with a SIP trunking calling plan that gives you the interoperability with the voice enabled Teams hosted SBCs. So again, a couple different options there depending on how you want to do it. One of the more popular ways folks do this is in their organization as they're consulting with their customers that have phone systems, they find the need that they want to put a few users on the Teams phone system. With our trunk sharing capabilities, you can take the SIP trunks that they've purchased or will purchase and share them with a phone system just as well as you would with Teams. So you can share back and forth, you can fail over back and forth. Universities K through 12 love this application. A lot of phone systems there and a lot of interest to get that Teams environment going. You can do hybrids or all together. So that is your SIP trunking plans that you can use. and you can use them with your own SBCs, customer provided SBCs, or our hosted SBCs. One other element and one other opportunity is I would say that we should talk about is GCC High. GCC High really comes into play is when you're dealing with organizations that are affiliated with the Department of Defense. Department of Defense is a great opportunity for you because the government either insists or highly encourages them not to use Microsoft as their phone company. And so they need you as a strategic partner. And you have the certifications with the SBCs that are used. So in this case, folks are coming to you to have a GCC application, GCC High application for their Microsoft phone system, and they need the calling minutes from you, especially for their conference calls and meetings. And that's where they'll come to you and buy a minute plan. These can be implemented very quickly. We offer an extremely competitive solution here, and we have the expertise, especially if there's any deep dives that they want to do. So we have carved out a really good practice on GCC High. If you run into this at all, please put us on speed dial and get us involved. Okay, so here's the summary of what you've seen today. Through the BCM family, you have very deep resources on Microsoft Teams. It can be complicated. There can be a lot of different scenarios, just like you're consulting with UCAS. A lot of things have to factor into the discussion. By doing it right, get us involved. We're thrilled to help. We're a true sell with organization. We want to go hand in hand with you. We'll recommend the path that we think is a future-proof design for them. It will be competitive and it'll be very thorough. These are all solutions that you can offer through us. Again, whether you come to us from Next Vortex or BCM1, and again, you're going to get the same great service. There's a lot of options. Again, I know it can be complicated. When you find one of these, you need any assistance, I hope you get us involved. I think, Bob, we're pretty close to on time. We like to be a person of our word. Is there any, how about we do a couple minutes of Q&A? Last time it ran long, but what if we do a couple minutes of Q&A if there was any questions that came up?
You got it. We have a few questions. The first one is, do you offer the Teams Polycom and Yealink phones for lease and or purchase? And a clarification to that first question is, so would they get them from us and have you configure and send them out to them?
Yeah, when someone's buying a Microsoft Teams solution set from us, and again, it could be as simple as the calling plans, or it could be the licensing, et cetera. Our policy right now is we sell a few of the different phones. I think the T58, T56 are the more popular ones. And from what I've seen of our playbook, we've been leading with the Yealink line, the late Yealink certified services, and they are a purchase option. Now, what's interesting, what I find, Bob, most folks are selling their own. We have a lot of technical partners. They come to us, we'll sell them. We don't have an official rental program at this point. Could come out, but right now it's a purchase, pre-configured, shipped. But if they would require us to at least buy the calling plans from us.
Second question is, do they have to have their O365 licenses moved over to us?
You don't have to. You don't have to do that at all. It's an opportunity for you as a business partner. Again, we have a lot of Microsoft business partners that they do all of that work, and that's not our intention to interfere with that in any way. But we have also plenty of folks that don't sell Microsoft services and want a piece of the action, and that's what we're here for. So you don't have to do that at all. There's, in many cases, folks are already set. They come to us initially for the consulting work to get the voice solution right. So again, you don't have to bring everything over to us. What you're really doing, Bob, is when you bond to us, you key in your credentials and you bond your tenant to our SBCs. It's a non-invasive product, or a non-invasive situation, and I've seen it's done quickly. It's easily. You don't have to bring everything over to us.
Moving on, the next question is, I see that some of the calling plans requiring 50 users or more. How do we handle the smaller groups like 25 or less?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad someone brought that up. It's the smallest plans we do are 10 users. There's a price break if you do 50 or more. It's if you do 50 or more, it's $7.95 for a calling plan. If you have small applications, 10, 12, 15, et cetera, it's $8.95 for the calling plan from us. just not as many users, and so you get a price break if it's 50 or more. Hopefully,
Okay.
good question. Thank you for asking that.
What will support look like? Call centers require heavy support.
Well, call centers, I mean, folks will come to us for our BroadSoft. BroadSoft is the platform we use under UCAS One, and so they're going to consult with us on what they need from a call flow perspective, call analytics, et cetera. And so once you go through that design and the dial plan rollout for their call center, Bob, then that's a big part of the support. I mean, I think it's a major part of the support. The other piece is you call into us. So you call into us 24/7, and we're there to help you. But you know, that's a big part of it. And then there's other pieces of that conversation. What about, you know, if you're using our BroadSoft service and uptime, do you need us to have extra resiliency on at your LAN level? I mean, do you need our SD-WAN to front end it? Another conversation. So there's a couple ways you can answer that support question. I think that the user may be asking about what about our NOC and how do we support afterwards? But I look at it as support for the design and that call center for uptime at the local level for connectivity. How do you support it at the NOC level? And how do you support it from a dial plan configuration rollout perspective? And I think folks will find out that we're well versed there.
This is an interesting question. Do you provide invoicing with all tax calculations to our customers with this solution?
Pre-tax, I guess, or I think that would be the question, right? Do we, in pre-sales, do we provide all the taxation up front in the solution? It'd be pre-sale. I would guess that may be the question. And
Right.
if that's the answer, I believe we can. We follow the letter of the law here on taxation, so happy to do it. I will tell folks that taxation's a moving target. I think it's going to get more challenging. There's a lot of budget shortfalls, and I am worried about what the tax outlook looks like for us on the phone side, but we have all that information. I think if you need it pre-sales, I don't believe there's any issue to get it.
This is a question that seems to come up quite often when we do these webinars, and that's why are we not using Teams for this meeting?
Oh, it's a great one. It's a great one. You
I
want to
can
answer it,
that.
Bob, or I'll
Sure,
answer it? Yeah, that's
sure.
a
Why
great
not?
one. I love it.
We use internally HubSpot for a lot of the marketing information that we do. It allows us to integrate with many of the other platforms that we utilize. That being said, Teams does not offer that. So simply from a marketing and a social platform, we've been using Zoom.
I think it's a good answer, Bob. I mean, just adding to it, I would argue usability, Zoom has some advantages. That would be my argument. And so we're not saying Teams is the fit for everybody. We like the Teams meetings, and if you ever look at a BCM meeting schedule, they're all Teams all day long. But for broadcast meetings, I would say I lean to Zoom. That's an honest answer from me.
Absolutely.
Yep.
With solution number 2, hybrid or not, Mike, is there a seamless handoff between the IP phone and Teams application on desktop, or mobile?
Yeah, there's really 2 parts of solution 2. Maybe I should back up into it, Bob. Maybe that would help for those that are interested in the design here. The simple way is you put UCAS One as the back end powering it all. SIP forking is what's used. We use that through our hosted SBCs, and that integrates in with Teams and integrates in with UCAS One. And so the handoff that you see is that when a call comes in, it's really ringing both devices. That's a common way to do it. Some folks don't want a handset from us at all. They want to just live in Teams, and that's their choice. But you really do see a seamless environment, and especially when you do call transfers, because you have an underlying framework across the board. That's easy. Where you start to see more challenges is if you do this solution here and you don't think through it. So in this environment here, you have maybe a small percentage. Maybe it's your call center, maybe it's your paging units that are on UCAS One. 80-90% of everyone else is on Teams. In that situation, you want to transfer a call, you're transferring between 2 separate systems. We want to have the chat. This is really enticing to folks because the cost can be very low And again, we find 80% of the users are usually very simple in their call demands, but it's two separate systems. So it depends on which one you have. This one that I showed earlier, this one is centralized system, easy. The other one is broken, advantages, cost savings, and if the environments are separate and don't need to interact as much, it's a nice play.
Hey, Mike, do you have any videos that demo the BCM1 portal?
I don't think we have not made a video of it. We have plenty of slides, but the slides are really easy to walk through. I believe in the last webinar we had, I know we have a couple on the site. I know one of them we've spent more time on it, but it's such an easy portal to use. If it's a need, we should probably think about making a video. We definitely have the slide documentation.
Sure.
And yeah, and I would also challenge folks that are interested in this. If you have the Microsoft phone system licenses, you already are up and running and you want to try this out, try out one of the calling plans, we do have a demo program for you. And that really makes it easy to get started. And you get in the portal, you see how it looks, you start making some calls. It's a 30-day program, but that may be helpful for some power users that want to jump into this.
Hey, Mike, here's another clarification question. So it would be $8.95 for Teams Phone, and then another $14.95 or $19.95 for UCaaS full integration. Is that correct?
Let me back up here. I'll show the prices here. So if you went to this model here, well, this is the hybrid model. If you have the full integration services, I'm on the wrong slide. I'm going to back up here. This is the slide here. This is the full integration. Every user has UCaaS 1, and every user has full Teams integration, right? For $19.95, we do the SIP forking and bonding for you. Your other cost here is you are also invoking the Microsoft phone system. There's an $8 charge historically from Microsoft for that license. As a gold partner, we can reduce that a little bit, but it's still a sizable cost. This is pretty common in the marketplace. Your folks are actually buying the Microsoft phone system and they're also buying a seat from their UCaaS provider. Some value here can be costly. In the model we showed, the hybrid model here, these folks that are using the UCaaS 1 service are usually using it for heavy calling needs. If they want the Microsoft phone system integration, they have to have a Microsoft phone system license. For the other users, they just have the license in the calling plan. I know there's a lot to unpack there.
To follow with that question, what is the pricing model? Commission-based, or can I bill my own customers?
The way that we have this set up, it's all customer facing with the portals and so forth. We bill customers directly with these models. Now, some things have been worked out where we have business partners that the customers will sign the agreement and they do a pay as, and we do have a service billing as a service platform that we can talk to those about if they have some sizable business they want to use and go that direction. But in general, day to day, Bob, what happens is that we bill our customers directly. Our business partners are paid commissions on those services, and they do see have access to our full support network.
Someone wants to know if there's a usage charge, and if so, what is the cost per minute?
Usage would be toll free or international on these plans. So if you're running toll free, we have a metered rate. If you have any volume, we have buckets of minutes you can buy. And international is outside the US, Canada markets. I believe a cost call to London is a 1.9 cents, if I remember right. So it's not too bad if you do international calling with it. Any of the service plans can do it. It's ready to go for you.
Is text SMS messaging available with this solution?
Not today, but we have through the BCM family, we have some really neat SMS resources available to us. This is not part of it today. There's some more work to be done there, but it is definitely being considered for the future. And it's a hot thread. It's a hot thread. Not today.
Shortest term offered and the longest term offered?
1 year term. 1 year term is how it works. The difference is, I know I'm bouncing around here a little bit. I'm going to go back to this plan here so you can see it. These are very popular. These are 1 year term arrangements. If folks do 3 year term, those are common too. It's the same price. Where you get into, rates can change is that if you're doing a full UCAS deployment, it's much more intensive work on the back end. Usually folks will start to look at phone rentals for UCAS, not Teams. They're looking at UCAS phone rentals. They're commonly deploying those in 3 year terms. But these plans here are 1 year term arrangement.
Next question. How quickly can we sell and deploy these products? Microsoft Teams on the A-Link handsets?
Well, I mean, the service is hardened and the ability to execute, that's easy. This isn't a new offering by any means. If you're talking about rollout in terms of provisioning, if a UCAS deployment is really the dial plan consulting. It's do we have the dial plan correct? And if once we have that done, is the business partner providing the compatible phones? Are we providing the phones? But it's not uncommon to have a 2-week deployment. Porting is your long piece. So some folks will start the porting process during that kickoff and give us a target FOC date they're racing towards. But pretty quick deployments. The dial plan consulting and making sure we understand your preferences usually is always the delay.
Hey, Mike, what's the limit on concurrent calls?
There really isn't a limit on concurrent call paths. I mean, it's if someone's hooking up an auto dialer, they wouldn't normally be using Teams. We do have acceptable use on that, but or broadcast applications, but these plans don't have a concurrent call limiter.
Next question is, someone noticed that Crestron on an earlier slide. Is this a current available option?
Yeah, that's a good point. The devices that were shown, these are Microsoft compatible devices. They are trying to add to it, but it's pretty limited. If you come to BCM1 today and say, I need a phone and I need to buy a Teams phone with your package, you're going to get a couple of A-Link models. I think there's 4 different models that we offer. But we do have plenty of folks that are doing their own deployments and are just coming to us for what you see on the screen here. The screen here is just gas for the car. They're going to hook up, they're going to look at their own device list and add the phones that they want to see fit. We have plenty of folks that are doing those integration services. So we didn't want to lead anyone to say those are all the phones in our portfolio. Those are the phones available in the market. And the other point of that conversation, Bob, is that you have to be aware of Teams firmware and Teams certification on the phone device you're hooking it up if it's going directly to the Microsoft phone system.
There were a few people that basically asked the same question, and that is, you mentioned school systems during the presentation. Schools use a lot of overhead speaker with different paging systems. Yep. How do you interface with these paging systems?
It's either an analog handoff or an IP handoff. So what's going to happen into the integration of the overhead is you're going to use your UCAS 1 framework. That's going to be the engine that drives it. And so the interoperability is really just IP to the device. We certify with a variety of different ones on the system, or you can do an analog gateway handoff to those. And so what happens in a Teams environment is you may see many simple call handling needs. And what they do is they dial a code, they dial a number from their Teams phone system. And what they're really doing is dialing into the BCM1 UCAS 1 service to engage that speaker system. So that's what's the underlying technology. It's really our UCAS 1 service, and we're just utilizing the interoperability capabilities there. Bob, I know we're getting a bit long, and I should have said this earlier. Folks don't have to stay the whole time because we did record this. But for the sake of the length of the meeting, why don't we have one more question if it exists, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Is this offered as a white label?
This is not offered as a white label. All the stuff you've seen today, again, is billed directly through BCM1 or Next Vortex to the end user customer. Same offerings. right? We have in our company, we have a division that specifically focuses on white label services, and they do have a Teams offering. It is different. Most of the audience on this call come to us as our traditional partner community. If they want to look at that, they're welcome to. But everything you've seen here is we bill directly to the customer. We pay commissions on.
All right, so that would be the last question for this webinar. Thank you all for attending. As I mentioned earlier, this call is recorded, and by end of week, it should be posted up on the BCM1 website. Again, thanks for attending, and we hope that you found this useful.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Appreciate it.